we're going to move on to our next session of the day. Our next presentation is from our silver sponsor, Eaton. Jeff Walsh, excuse me, is product line manager, industrial controls with Eaton, and he's going to join us live in just a minute. But first, we have a short video to show you.
Did you know that we have a line of enclosed starters designed specifically for the mining industry? For more than 25 years, we've been building enclosed starters that are built specifically for 3 different mining applications. Our dewatering pump panels are designed for controlling submersible pumps. Our ventilation panels are designed for controlling fan motors, and our power takeoff panels are designed to control power to equipment like jumbo drills and bolters.
Hi there.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
You too.
I think you're going to take it away now with the presentation, and I'll be back for a short Q&A.
Perfect. Just let me get my screen up. I assume everyone can see my screen now?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So, first off, I'm pleased to be participating in today's event. It's been very engaging to hear a lot of passion in the topics that are already discussed today. Mark Elliott, who is with Eaton, he'll be discussing some of the ESG initiatives later on today, probably about an hour from now. But for now, I'm going to dive in and talk about and highlight some of the intelligent products that we manufacture specifically for the mining segment. So much like the video I just kind of showed, if it was very short, but if you caught about it, I mean, we're going to discuss 3 major assemblies. So for dewatering pump panels, we'll start there. So pump panels are a combination motor starter, electric motor starter. And as the name would suggest, it's application specific to dewatering pumps. All of our assemblies that I'll be talking about today have been tested and marked with the CCSA US insignia, which means CSA has also tested them to the UL standards, so they can be used on either side of the border. The starter includes ground fault and ground check protection relay for dealing with trailing cables, and the units are available with a number of our contactors. So if you wanted an IEC contactor or a NEMA contactor or a vacuum contactor, that's all available as a technology that we can include inside the enclosure. And then we pair it with different overloads. So our different series of overloads all have different protections and functionality. And then you can also have a reduced voltage soft starter option as well, which the overload is built into the soft start. We also offer panel mount receptacles for convenient termination of load cables. Now our product guide can be found at eatoncanada.ca/mining panels. And each section has a product summary, as well as a part number matrix for configuring the assembly and dimensions. We also include some wiring diagrams that help the user understand the control circuit. As much as I'd like to, it would make life easier or more simple for us if a cookie cutter solution was suitable, we realize that not every site's the same. So it's this wiring diagram that helps us continue the conversation and customize the starter to include the features that are important to your site. As an example, this slide shows some of those details. So on the left side, you see dimensions and weights. On the bottom right, you see the typical schematic that shows the power diagram as well as the control circuit. And up at the top, you can see the part number matrix that is used to configure all the assemblies. So a DPP prefix would be for dewatering pump panel, a PTO, which we'll talk about shortly, is a power takeoff panel, and a VP would be a ventilation panel. Then as you pick your assembly type of disconnect, operating voltage, enclosure types on NEMA 12 or NEMA 4X, and so on and so forth as you configure your parts. Now, sometimes if we talk about a PTO right now, or a power takeoff panel, sometimes referred to as a ground fault panel or even a jumbo panel, which is referring to the load type. The most obvious difference between a pump panel and a PTO panel is the omission of an overload. So the power takeoff panel is used to safely and reliably control electrical power to the equipment such as jumbos and bolters at the face. We have a single PTO offering which has one contactor and used to switch the power to just one load, but we also offer a dual mode as well. In the standard dual, the typical dual comes with 2 contactors, but can only have one operating at a single time. And that's operated or selected at the door of the enclosure from the operator via a selector switch. But we also have a dual concurrent mode, which or model, which offers the user to have both contactors energized. So the benefits of a dual is a smaller footprint rather than having two enclosures mounted side by side on a strut rack. And it only requires a single wire pull for the supply side. Now the vent panels are used for fan motors. And just like the pump panels, we offer across the line. So you can have the contactor and overload, or you can have a reduced voltage soft start option as well. We also have variable frequency drive assemblies where if the user wants to provide us with a dynamic speed reference. And today there's already been some discussion about energy savings, and it's those types of starter technologies, the reduced voltage soft start, which helps mitigate the ramp or the inrush at the beginning of a motor being energized, or a drive that can support those energy savings initiatives. Now, up until now, I talked about 3 assemblies that you can order from us, but I'm also responsible for components, so supporting our OEMs in the industry as well. But when we talk about modernization and keeping those assets in the field going, there's countless aging starters that are installed in standalone enclosures as well as motor control centers. So our AN19 series of competitive retrofit kits is an easy way to upgrade the existing starter to an electronic overload. The competitive retrofit comes with, as you can see on the image, comes with a backplate which is pre-drilled to match both legacy Eaton starter hole patterns as well as competitors. The kit also includes a reset push button so that there's no issues aligning the overload with any existing reset plunger. We also offer a communication kit that can be used to upgrade existing electronic overloads so that they can, so you can add it to an existing electronic overload and now make it communicating, or you can combine it with the competitive retrofit kits. These provide a site with a reliable method to understand and communicate the critical information as such as what is happening with my load and why did it happen. Now, through those 25 years of voice of the customer and dealing with assemblies, I want to put a lot of focus just real quick on this, is that one of our most important options is pairing our enclosure windows with our Visi breakers. So as you can see on the left-hand image, we add or modify our breakers to have a high vis paint on the blades. And then we add windows to the faceplate of the breaker. So then when you combine this with our enclosure, you have a window that you can see through the enclosure and then confirm through a visual confirmation, you can confirm that the breaker is energized or de-energized. So introducing another level of safety when someone can look through the enclosure and have an understanding before lockout tagout whether the unit is really de-energized. So that extra awareness has been key, and a lot of people don't realize that feature is out there. And once they do realize it, it's very much a want in the industry. That's all I've got for a quick presentation. I'm suspecting that, or I'm hoping that there's some questions and answer that I can answer here.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I do have a few questions here. Where are these products built?
So Eaton has a complete coast-to-coast network of satellite assembly plants. So from Dartmouth and Nova Scotia right to Delta and BC. But they're primarily built, obviously, with the Northern Ontario being a hotbed for us. Mississauga, Ontario is our location where the majority is built. And we process all orders from any of our authorized distributors that are, can sell and close control.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the energy savings opportunities here?
Certainly. So, for people who are not familiar with electrical, so a motor has a typical inrush when you energize it, and it's going to pull a big spike of current when you first start it. So when I say across the line starters, that's that contactor that opens and closes, and you have an overload that thermally protects and monitors the motor. When you talk about reduced voltage starters, you have the option then to have a ramp that slowly increases the speed till it becomes across the line, or running at synchronous speed or synchronous speed less slip. So running at full speed. And then we have variable frequency drives that can also be used. So you can feed the drive a speed reference and it goes, it only outputs what it's required. And that's where, when you look at the affinity laws, you've got, as an example, 75% speed would be roughly 42% energy consumption. So the energy savings there is significant on a drive. But when you do put things like drives underground, there's a strong preventive maintenance piece that comes along with it, because you've got to deal with the heat that's inside it. You also have to deal with the harmonics that come from nonlinear loads such as drives. But when it comes to the heat, filter media with different pores per inch is an option to be placed on the enclosure door, on the intake and the exhaust, so that they, on a PM, they would just be able to swap out and wash them. Vortex coolers are pretty cool, considering that there's compressed air usually available, so that keeps a positive pressure inside the enclosure. But it may not be economical depending on the watt losses you have. Air conditioners or other types of heat exchangers are options as well. And then, you got liquid to liquid or liquid to air exchangers that, if your primary coolant is not clean enough to drink, then you could introduce corrosion to the transfer plate. So those things just have to be watched when looking at applying a drive.
And just one last question. You showed us those viewing windows. Other than that, are there other safety related options?
Yeah, so we, obviously I'll scroll back to the window here real quick. I don't know if I'm sharing it anymore, but I just a view of that. There's other types of, so the viewing window itself helps you visualize, or helps the electrician identify whether the blades are in the open or closed position of the breaker. But then there's also voltage indicating devices that can be installed on the enclosure. They'd be connected. Some people want them connected to both line and load side. So you'd have A phase, B phase, C phase, all indicating lights on the device that, you can walk up to it and confirm that there's no voltage present at the line side or load side through those devices. And there's also test probe provisions that'll allow someone to actually, install, use their meter to connect to the terminal points. Now, all of that is really just to make sure you obviously have to have the right amount of PPE on to be even in front of the enclosure, but all these things are in an effort to really reduce the hazard of anyone having the enclosure open.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. I'm looking forward to being a participant through the rest of the day.
Great. Take care.
Thank you.